All right. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, today's topic will be to basically how to play when the opponent has a restricted piece, and also kind of another footnote to that is how to, how it's important to play kind of where you're stronger. So let's say if you have a pawn majority on the king side, you play on the king side. Usually, if you have a pawn majority on the queen side, you play on the queen side most of the time, right? So that's kind of the focus today. So the first game I wanted to show you is a game I played in Charlotte last year, end of last year, against the 2400 player, Milind Mahti. And I'm gonna skip through the opening. And well, we reached an IQP here, and my opponent played a6, which probably is not the best move, but I already kind of like this particular line for white. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Okay, so first interesting moment actually is here. So white to play. What should white do here? I'll give you guys a few minutes. You can type in your answers in the chat, and then someone who has the best answer, I'll call on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first just type in the chat, and then once you have an answer, I'll call on you. Excuse me. Yeah, if your answer is one move, then try to give some explanation why, let's say, that move instead of something else. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so far we got two people wanting to play 94. Okay. Okay, we also have 95. Very interesting. Okay, how about I'll unmute Vihan and let's discuss this a little bit. Let me find Vihan 1 second. All right. Yeah, I'll unmute you so you can go ahead and explain your move.
So I wanted to play 95.
Okay. So why you want to play 95?
So like just putting them in the center and it's attacking the weak c-pawn.
Sorry, say it again. I kind of
it's attacking the weak c-pawn and just putting the line in the center.
Yeah. Okay. There's kind of a deeper purpose to this actually, which we'll talk about in a second. So I would say there are three main moves to consider here. Three main candidate moves. There's 95, and there's also knight a4 or knight e4, right? To try to stop c5 and try to maybe stop knight c3. But I believe the best move is actually 95, and the reason 95 is actually a very strong move here is because it declares your opponent. It's kind of like puts opponent under difficult situation where opponent now has to commit to which direction the game goes. Now, yeah, queen c7 we'll talk about in a second. So if bishop b7, Vihan correctly mentioned that we can play knight e4, knight c5, and now the bishop on b7 is going to be rather misplaced. Whereas, because like in the game, I played knight a4, and then he got to play a5, bishop a6, right? So knight e5 makes the bishop commit. If knight takes c3, b takes c3, c5 will not work because of knight c6, and then go bishop a3 here. And bishop b7, something like b1, queen f3, it's like pretty dangerous initiative here. So Kirk correctly asks the question, well, what if queen c7? Queen c7 is, of course, a very logical move. And it seems like 95 didn't really do very much for us. However, here, white has a very nice continuation. And let's see if you guys can find it. All right, Sefer, why don't you go ahead and explain your answer?
So I got knight takes d5,
Mhm.
and then c takes bishop f4,
Mhm.
and then I want to potentially play rook c1 in the future.
Right. Very good. That's the thing, right? That's here we're exposing the fact that the queen is slightly misplaced here on c7, and also we actually have a very nice way to continue playing here. So it looks like the structure is not going to be very favorable for white, right? Because now black does not have the c6 weakness anymore. However, what's important here is that we gain a tempo, say bishop d6, rook c1, queen b7. And here black has sort of a restricted piece, right? And that's kind of going to be the theme of today's lesson, right? Whenever our opponent has a restricted piece in their camp, we want to try to attack, put pressure on the other part of the board. So let's say here, the bishop on c8 is sort of restricted on the queen side, right? Kind of stuck between these square, like d7, d7, and so on and so forth. It's not really participating. So, as Eric correctly pointed out, we want to play rook b3, right? Start a rook lift, prepare like rook b3 or rook h3, queen h5. And white has an absolute massive attack here. It's a very good position for white. If queen b2, by the way, we trap the queen with here, a1. And it makes sense the tactics work out for white because black has a restricted piece, right? So sometimes we can compromise the pawn structure in order to gain initiative. And whenever opponent has a restricted piece, we have to always try to look for getting an initiative on the other part of the board, right? So that's a very important takeaway. And the queen b7, by the way, same thing. You can go rook e3, threatening rook b3, still cannot take it, right? And black has too many things to worry about. c6 square. Bishop d7, I think you can rook b3, queen here, and now maybe even queen h5. And this is very dangerous. Like rook h3 is coming. This could be very dangerous for black. Knight takes d5 is a very strong move. Basically, knight e5 is a very strong idea. Basically, declaring black, asking them what he wants to do, disturbing their harmony. If they go here, the queen is badly placed, and then we can do knight d5, bishop f4 again. And if bishop e7, then we can go knight e4 or knight a4. And no matter what, we get a good position. Instead, I played knight a4. Knight a4 and knight e4 are kind of similar in a way. Both of them are trying to kind of control the c5 square. But I like knight a4 a little bit more, just because we're controlling the c5 square. And we're also preventing a5, a4. So I thought that's kind of more natural. So a5, bishop d2. So trying to play rook c1. Bishop a6, here we played a3. Bishop b5, rook c1. Now, what do you guys do for black? Black to play, and now try to equalize. So I missed my chance to kind of, get initiative on the king side. And now my opponent has a chance to equalize. So what should black do here? Make sure you give a whole variation, not just one move. Eric, why don't you unmute and explain your answer?
So I want to play bishop takes a4 because this can help prevent the knight from going to c5 and then him putting pressure on the c6 pawn. And then now after queen b6, you can you're threatening to take b2, so he can't take the c6 pawn. If he protects the c2 pawn, you can prepare for c5 and then remove the weakness.
Very good, yes. This queen b6 or queen b8, by the way, also works. It's a very strong idea because, c6 pawn, we're attacking the b2 pawn in return. And otherwise, we're going queen b5 and we have a lot of pressure on b2. And like Eric said, also c5 in some cases. And we trade off his, one of his best pieces, the knight, which was going to go to c5 for our potentially restricted bishop. So this would have been like a very nice equalizing way. My opponent missed it, and instead he played knight d6. And after knight c5, he played a4. So that's like a very human approach. But here we both, I think, missed that I had a very interesting idea. Knight e6, queen takes 6, a4, bishop a6, knight e5. And this is just very concrete, threatening knight 6c6 and knight d7. If queen b2, bishop a5, white gets a pretty nice advantage, sizable advantage. And rook c8 does not work because then f7 comes under scrutiny, and white is more or less winning here. So this was a very concrete idea, which unfortunately I missed. I played this, a4, queen c2. In general, I was playing kind of a little bit too fast. So I was playing very natural moves, but I wasn't looking enough at creative, better options. So that was I was a bit disappointed about that. So okay, queen c2 is fine. Bishop f6, that was not the best move because that allows knight e4. And okay, the bishop on f6 is a little bit misplaced because he cannot take it anyway because of this. And knight d6 is winning, among other things as well. Yeah, so he played knight d5. And I played knight e5, which I believe was a good move. Because if he takes, then this is really good for me. I get the g5 square. The e5 pawn is really strong. It takes away the f6 square from the knight, meaning that I might get a very good attack. So he played rook e8, which is understandable. And here is another very important critical moment. Here I did spend some time, but I did not manage to find the best plan. And here, once again, we have to try to look for, think about our theme today and try to figure out how to improve our position. Very nice, instructive moment here. Yeah, the stuff here is a little bit difficult in this game, but I see some very strong players in the class today, so figured I wanted to do something kind of a challenging concept. So knight c5 is restricting the b5 bishop. The thing about that move is that I just played knight e4 a couple of moves earlier, right? So that would be a little bit inconsistent to what I've done. So we want to try to see if maybe we have another way to improve our position first. Because knight c5 we may or may not want to play, but there's another pretty nice plan here. All right, Sefer, you can go ahead and explain.
So I thought queen d1 to reroute the queen to the king side.
Very good. Absolutely correct. And by the way, Angela also just came up with it. Right. So queen d1 with the idea of queen g4, queen h5. Right. Because we would love to do a rook lift, but we can't because of the knight on d5. Right. But the queen on c2, yeah, it doesn't really have a good way to get into black's position. But after queen d1, queen g4, queen h5, it's adding that very powerful attacker just, really improves our position. And that's another thing we have to keep in mind. Whenever we have an isolated pawn, right, and we have these active pieces, one of the common ways we want to try to use our isolated pawn to our advantage is by trying to bring heavy pieces into the game. Rook lift, or as in this case, a queen lift, right? And the queen just shifts over to the king side with queen g4, queen h5. Black's position is very difficult here. It's not lost, but for example, I can try this. If g6, yeah, I probe more weaknesses. And if f8, I can go queen g4. Then I can go queen f3, rook c2, rook c1. And white's position is really, really good. Yeah, unfortunately, I missed this plan. I played g3. And then I sort of lost my advantage after that. I played some kind of not very helpful moves. And yeah, it's not easy, right? Queen d1 move not easy, but again, if you understand, the idea of improving all of our pieces and think about the worst placed piece and thinking about improving, then it's possible to find it. And yeah, if you have to try to attack on the king's side, you have to look for all creative ways to get there. Yeah, I didn't really manage to do much. And then my opponent managed to sort of equalize. He took on c3 at some point and played c5. It's very concrete, actually. And because I thought for a second that he cannot do that, because I thought, okay, I can play c4, but c4 he takes on d4, and there's just nothing. And I was also considering take, but then queen c7 doesn't do very much. And I was also considering bishop takes h6, but the thing is that could be ignored. He can take on d4, threatening rook c3, and this is still a pretty big mess here. So d5 came, e d5, and then c4. And I thought I kind of tricked him, especially he was getting low on time. I thought maybe he missed this idea, and maybe he did, but he was able to either way find a pretty nice way to play here. It turns out there's like several good ways to play, but yeah, he played bishop f6, and I thought, okay, let's. He can't go bishop d6 because of knight f7 here, queen f5, queen d5. But I thought bishop f6 is like not good because like rook d5, and I thought queen c7 is kind of what I mechanically calculated. And then, I thought I'm winning here, which I was right. I am winning here. But the problem was that he has an amazing resource, queen a5. And if I go bishop d2, he goes queen a8. And amazingly enough, my pieces are just poorly coordinated. And he still has the two bishops. And suddenly it's me who has to think about equalizing here. So unfortunately, I had to put on the brakes here and just make sure I don't lose. And eventually we made a draw here. So yeah, that was I thought an interesting game. But I thought like some moments early on were very interesting, like how to take advantage of opponents' restricted pieces, as well as some other concepts. Let me see. Have some other interesting games. Yeah, so but the thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to even be on the king's side, right? Because sometimes an opponent, let's say, could have a restricted piece on the king's side, and then we want to try to get the initiative on the queen's side. So let me explain. So this is a game with of my coach, Georgi Gachishvili. He was white in the game against Denis Shmelyov, and yeah, he played kind of a very unambitious opening, but he's just kind of trying to get his opponent out of theory and then be able to later on outplay his opponent, which sort of the game followed that script. This is all pretty standard here. Like I think so far both sides are playing well. And now here white plays 95. And here black went kind of the most natural thing here, but it turns out it was a mistaken plan. So Shmelyov here played knight takes e5, and then he started exchanging the bishops as well. So he was basically starting to exchange a lot of pieces. Who can explain to us why this plan of exchanging a bunch of pieces maybe was not best, and better it's to play a move like queen b6, queen b8, or whatnot? Who can tell us why is this plan not so great? Oh, for black, why is this plan not so great for black? Yes, very good, of course. The bishop on h7 is that, right? And usually when opponent has a bad piece, it's usually a good idea for us to try to exchange the neutral pieces and then kind of leave them with that bad bishop, right? With that bad restricted bishop. And by exchanging all these pieces, black sort of gives white a free ride on the queen side with like b4 and stuff. And white can easily get initiative on the queen side. Why? Because it's bishop on h7. It's just restricted, right? So whereas if black played something like this, it would not be felt as much. It would be very difficult for white to actually get queenside play here. And yeah, then the position is just very complex. I mean, it's not actually easy for white to find a clear plan. Obviously, it's hard for white to play on the king's side because the bishop does a great job protecting it. And on the queen's side, black also has things under control. So position will be roughly equal. But black was kind of, trying to make a draw, understandably, against the stronger player. But this allowed white to have a very easy game. And here Shmelyov played queen f6, which again kind of also plays into white's hands. because the endgame becomes even more unpleasant. Right now, it's even harder for black to create counterplay against these pawns. And basically, what happens is white just sort of steamrolls black. Like here, after f4, it's like already a plus-minus position. Although, of course, the way Georgi played with e4, getting control over the center even more, was also very good. Then he brought the king in, and notice how the bishop on h7 is still very restricted. And e5, finally he opened it up, but now the knight on e8 is very restricted. So, and the bishop actually still doesn't really have great counterplay. And had white played rook c3 here, which was probably the best move, followed by ideas like knight a7, perhaps, white is more or less winning. The engine was saying about +3 here. Okay, this was also kind of winning, trading this off, because black has a bunch of weaknesses. And eventually, white still has a much better endgame, and eventually, white was able to win this game. Okay, so there was another nice example on that theme. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys some exercises, and you're going to try to see if you can figure it out. This is the game I played with black against Josiah Sturman and I am. And actually, I have 2 games against him, interestingly enough. And yeah, so here. Yeah, I think I think it's here. Yes. So what plan should black choose here on the white? Just like a couple of exercises. Okay, so playing e5 is kind of what I did. I mean, it was okay. B4 was a suggestion. B4, I think it's very interesting. Where if you take, I guess there's. I mean, the move is very logical, but maybe I could play knight takes 4, and this could be a little bit messy. So maybe we're not quite ready yet to play b4. So I kind of like David's solution the most. I think the best way is to play a5. And well, basically the point is we have to play on the queen side. Why? Pretty simple. 3-on-1 majority, right? So as they say, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So you have to try to use that majority. And after castles, you can play rook a6, maybe rook b8 later on. And yeah, white just has no counterplay. And little by little, you will be able to at some point get b4 in kind of under, best circumstances. So I did play rook e8, h4 was played in the game, queen b6, and I went with this plan. But yeah, and here again, I could have tried this a5 plan, right? a5, bishop a6 before was a very logical plan here as well. But yeah, I played incorrectly. And eventually, I gave my opponent like enough compensation here. And later on, I won because my opponent blundered. Okay, I might as well give it to you as an exercise as well. Yeah, there were some complications. And then my opponent at some point made a blunder. Yeah, so the question is, where should the white queen go? It's kind of a very important question. Yeah, so it's pretty much a debate between queen d5, queen f. So first of all, my opponent blundered with queen c6, but queen c6, rook b1, and what my opponent missed was that after king f2, I have queen a7, exclamation mark. And this is just mate. It's just mate. Yeah, rook g1, it's just mate, king h4, queen f2. So the point is we have to cover both the c5 square and the a7 square from the diagonal check. And of course, king d2, there's queen d8. So yeah, we have to play queen a5, because then after this check, you just go king f2, right? There's just nothing. So yeah, I would have gonna play here, but then king d1 and position is actually very messy and unclear. Queen d5, I think, is also not losing immediately, but it's not as accurate, because after, I think, knight f6, it's still kind of tricky for white. But yeah, the key is to control c5 and a7. So queen a5 is the simplest. Okay, let's see another game. This is also against Josiah. This will be only one critical moment. So this game was kind of important for me to win, because I lost a very painful game the round before in Charlotte to Titus Stramavicius, which, by the way, I covered in one of my previous videos on US Chess School. It's never too late to lose, so you can still check it out on YouTube. It's there. If you go to YouTube and search Lenderman, you can US Chess School, you can find it there if you weren't in that class. So this was the next game I had to play after that to try to rebound, and I decided, to try to play the exchange Slav to try to put a little bit of pressure on him. But yeah, my opponent managed to play in a very solid way. And then he played this move 97. So I kind of didn't analyze the exact way he played. So I needed to be creative to, be able to at least pose a couple of problems. Okay, C1 is okay. And knight f5, bishop d3, takes 96. Yeah, and now white to play and try to pose at least some problems. What do you think white should do and why? I would say there are two interesting ways to do it, but I didn't manage to find either one. I played in a very toothless way and pretty much had to agree to a draw 5 moves later or something. Okay, Sefer, makes sense. Davis also makes sense. Okay, you know what? Let's hear from Sefer again. Why don't you talk about your two options?
So my two moves were both, one of them is knight h5 to mess with black on the king side.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to a balanced position.
And also explain your f3 move.
Okay, so I wanted to play e4 here with the f4. F3 is to go, and then the plan is to play e4. And that would be very strong for white.
Okay, explain to me, why are you looking at playing on the king side instead of the queen side?
I have a strong, all my pieces are pointing towards the king side, especially my bishop on d3.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and what? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to play especially on the h7 square. It might be weak.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he has glaring weaknesses in the beginning right away, right? I mean, black's position is very solid, but what I was really hoping you would say is that pay attention to this bishop on c8. Very good, Bihan got it. Pay attention to that bishop on c8. That's very, very important, right? Noticing these kind of different subtleties, noticing these kind of things during a chess game can really help point the direction of where you should look at, right? You see, I'm a GM, and despite that, I kind of forgot about this rule that when opponent has a restricted piece, I have to try to get initiative on other side, right? And had I even thought about this rule, I would never consider playing in such a toothless way, like knight b5, and basically after this, more or less. Yeah, more or less agreeing to a draw here, right? This is just, became such a dead draw, right? Rook takes c8, knight d6, and just completely fizzled out, and there's absolutely nothing I can do, right? So I would not even consider a plan like that because it's so toothless. And knight a4 is also toothless because we can play b6 or even bishop d7, right? And knight on c5 doesn't do very much. So again, I'm not sure which one is better, f3 or knight h5, but I definitely had to look in that direction. So at least pose some problems. For example, after knight h5, if I play bishop d7, maybe I can take queen h5, right? So there are some ideas. Like if g6, I can try queen e5, right? Maybe the knight will not have great square, right? So at least I'm probing some weaknesses. After h6, I can also play maybe something like f5 or I remember I was trying to play this with black against engine. Like I was losing very quickly, right? So it's like not easy. And f3 is also very good, right? Because f3, you're thinking about not only playing e4, but also g4. G4 is also an idea. At some point, g5, king h1, g5, rook g1, h4. Again, black has a restricted piece, so it's a little bit harder for black to really be able to get enough defenses on the king side. So either way, I have to try to play something like this, right? And at least I would get winning chances if I do that. It's not like I'm much better. It's like maybe plus 0.3, plus 0.4, but at least, I have chance to create problems, right? And that's how, you can win games especially against lower rated opponents. But instead, I played a very toothless draw, and that was it, right? So that was another instructive moment, I think. And this is a game I played kind of very recently. Opening, and I was white, and and here I have a nice position. So let's just kind of start with this position. And what plan do you think white should play here, and why? And again, I really want you guys to give an explanation, because that's, if you understand why you're playing this certain move, then you'll be able to obviously implement the same ideas in your real games as well, right? In similar positions. All right, Sephra got it, of course. Very good. Let's see if someone else finds it, because we already called him Sephra a couple of times. All right, Vihan also sort of got it, although I would just do this thing right away without even preparing, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So prepare for d4 is also what I did. I did play d4 here, which I thought was not as good. d4, e5, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. d4 I played, but he didn't take. So that's the problem. He doesn't take after d4. Yeah, so a couple of people got it. Basically, again, we have a restricted knight on a7, so what do? We attack on the king side. Knight h4, knight f5, queen f3, boom, 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 right? It becomes very difficult for black to play. The only chance is to play d5, e4, but, to play like this is very hard. Like, you almost need to be a computer. Like, knight d5 would not work as well because of knight f5, queen g4. So you kind of have to play like this, knight f5 here. Still, black will be down with 1 here. It's not really that good for black. So white's still much better. But yeah, I mean, knight h4 was just asking to be played. Instead, I played d4, but I'm playing kind of on the queen side, right? And then he sort of can use the knight on a7 better, right? Which is why it's a less logical plan. It's a good question. Is there knight e4 after knight h4? I don't think so, because I can take here, maybe rook d4, and then I have knight f5, rook g7 problems. Yeah, I think rook g7 is coming here. So that's it looks like a problem. Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah. So and bishop a3 was also mentioned, but I don't think that does very much. Maybe c6 or maybe knight c8, improving the bishop. Seems a little bit too slow. c6 failed because of bishop a3. No, I think we just go knight f5, queen f3 very directly. And then we just try to give mate. There's no reason to play bishop a3 here. I mean, the bishop's very good here. So yeah, I don't think we want to move the bishop from c1. We want to be flexible with that bishop. Yeah, so I played d4, and there was another interesting moment later on in the game. of course, I was still better after d4. But then, yeah, I have this position here, and how should white play? Another instructive moment. Again, from a conceptual standpoint of view. So Angela, you almost got it, but we want to prepare that idea a little bit. So again, hint is play where you're stronger. Try to play where you're stronger, where you have the best chances to get initiative. All right, Eric got it. Eric got it. So let's call on Eric. Let's see, where's Eric? Okay.
So I wanted to play f4, and then maybe threaten like e5 or something in the center.
Very good. Yeah.
I would get like I have a lot of center space and a really good bishop on a2, and I could also aim for like the f7 square and try to like open up the f file.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, and if rook c8, we go bishop e3, and nothing too bad is happening for us on the c file. Rook c3, we can play e5, e6, and white has a very good position. So yes, we have to try to use the fact that he's kind of he doesn't have any initiative on the queen side. Also, his pawn majority is pretty much dead. So we have to try to use our center to try to get some initiative on the king's side in the center, because we sort of have 5 and 4 there, right? So we have to play where we're stronger. d5, I think, was suggested. That's not as good because it blocks our bishop. Again, it puts the pawns on the color of the bishop and weakens all our squares. And also e5 immediately, it's interesting, but problem is then we give him the c5 square, essentially. So we don't really want to do that too quickly. And bishop b3, bishop d1, bishop e2 seems a little bit slow to me. I can play rook c8, and here I can play like rook c3, and then like rook c2, right? So it seems a little bit slow, right? And because our bishop is pretty well placed here anyway, so we don't want to spend so much time improving our bishop, which already looks fine. And queen f2, queen g3. Yeah, I'm not sure about moving the queen too far away from action, because I think here black did a lot of activity, like rook d2, queen f6, rook c3. Rook c1 is actually what I did, but then the problem was that queen and knight in general are a very good combination, right? So, and my king is a little bit open, and now it's really hard for me to really get any kind of make use of my advantage on the king side, and the position is kind of equalizing here. He played a nice move, knight f8, because after this he gives check and just gets off counter. Wait, yeah, g5. Maybe it's even very bad for white, but I saw at the very least he has some draw. Yeah, so this was quite dangerous. So I ended up playing here, and like I was able to win somehow later on, but like at this point I lost all my advantage. Yeah, there was a couple of other exercises I wanted to give you. This is Nair against Shirov. Again, on a piece activity and how to try to take advantage of opponents' restricted pieces. All right, Davis, why don't you go ahead and explain?
So I think white should play c5. Because if white doesn't play c5, then black will do knight d7 and knight c5, and white will have a very bad bishop. And now if black takes, white has knight d2 and knight c4, and white will go pretty active.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Now, knight h4 was a couple of people's suggestion. It's very interesting, taking advantage of. But the thing is, the bishop can actually go to c8, right? It control the f5 square. It can get back in the game very quickly. And also we can go g6, followed by knight d7, knight c5. So it's like the knight's not really going anywhere, right? We're not really getting initiative here. And, the black's bishop can, get back to normality very soon, right? So it's only kind of restricted to like for a second, right? But, it's a piece. These are pieces, rook on a7, bishop on b7, that could get in the game very, very quickly, which is why we have to act very energetically to disturb his harmony and not let him do that, which is why c5 move is very powerful. We sacrifice a pawn, a double pawn, and in return, we're activating our bishop on b3, we're making it better, we're improving our knight, getting into c4, and also, we're taking away a square, c5 from his knight, right? And after knight d2, knight d7, knight c4, knight d8, and bishop a4, now the bishop already did its job on b3. White is just much better, because after f6, we can take and go queen e3, threatening queen c5, and white's doing really, really well. So black played here, and white pretty much won the strategical battle, and later on was able to win the game. All right, well, let's see what else we have. Yeah, and of course, this is a classic, right? Karpov against Utsikar that probably most of you have seen at some point before. But still, yes, yes, exactly. But still, it's always kind of useful to, remind ourselves of some beautiful concepts, right? So of course, this is a very passive line. At least black should take on d4 and play knight c6, which is sort of what Hansen did against Carlsen today, and won. But yeah, this is just way too passive, I believe, because knight on d8 is very restricted. And this game shows very nicely how to play when opponent has a statically bad piece, right? So the first point here is that it's very important not to let that knight ever get in the game, right, in a convenient way. So what black wants here is he wants to play c4, knight b7, knight c5, right? That much is clear. So what white does is he takes and he plays this move b4. So that way, the knight can never get to c5 ever again. If white will play the prosaic knight f1, then black will play c4 and bring the knight there, right? And now b4 he can take. But by playing b4 earlier, that knight on d8 does not get in the game, right? So it's very important to think prophylactically. Probably not too many people were able to think prophylactically better than Anatoly Karpov, the great world champion. So knight b7, knight f1. Now white regroups his pieces. Yeah, he's stopping f5 at some point. And now, of course, black wants to seize control over the A file. So, we play bishop a7. It's a very famous move, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. Preparing bishop c2 and rook a1. Knight e8, bishop c2. So now white has completely got control over the queen side, right? He has more space there. He has all these pieces. Well, basically, white was able to paralyze the queen side, right? Black cannot do anything. But how to win the game? Right? In order to win, you have to create a second weakness, which is why white starts to prepare this f4, f5 plan to either get more space or get himself new squares, such as the d4 square. Yeah, black could still try to take, of course, and then after this, knight f3, bishop d4, right? But black played this, f5, and then g5. So black is just trying to really defend for dear life, and just trying to, not get killed immediately, right? So the question is, what would be a good plan here in this position? How to finish off the game in the most effective way? Yes, Eric is correct. Yeah, we go knight g3, bishop d2, bishop d1. So the important thing is we need to try to make sure we improve our pieces, right? So in a position like this, we don't have any tactics, no concrete ideas, checks, captures, threats. Then we have to check for opponent's ideas. But opponent is completely passive, right? He cannot do anything except for sit around and wait and hope that white does not break through. But if white does it too quickly, tries to play h4, that would actually play into black's hands, right? Because then black can go knight f7, and suddenly black's pieces, which earlier on felt completely dead, suddenly they're giving some hope, right? They're giving some hope, and they're kind of, pretty much going back to life. You start thinking. And g4 sort of gives black a little bit of hope, because now the white's bishop never is going to get in the game. And there could be a slight chance of a fortress here. So white plays this very nice logical plan, right? You have to always think, what are my least active piece? What piece can I improve, right? Dream squares for our pieces. And it turns out there are two pieces that we can still improve, right? Rook a3, queen a2, we don't need to do that. The queen on d2 is fine the way it is. The rooks are fine the way they are. Getting more pieces on the queen side won't really help us, because black is very solid on the queen side. We need to eventually break through on the king side. But for that, we need to exchange his only decent piece, the bishop on e8, right? And then we're going to leave him with three really, really bad, statically bad pieces that are just completely worthless, right? So we're pretty much killing two birds in one stone, where, just like Georgia did against Shmelov, right? We're exchanging his neutral pieces to leave him with the bad piece. In this case, three bad pieces: bishop on g7, knight on d8, and knight on c7. So we're exchanging his somewhat decent bishop on e8, and we're, making use of our bishop on c2 and knight on e2. So black played there, and now white came into h5. Something like queen e8 would not really help, because still we're going bishop e2, queen d1. And after h5, we go here, and knight f1. And now we go g3, and the other knights are completely stuck. Yeah, so black ended up coming here, and there. Yeah, and then white came in, and white just won the game. Yeah, so it's a really, really interesting game. Yeah, I was gonna also maybe show the game Van Forest against Geary, which I thought was very interesting. But looks like we're kind of running out of time. But I do feel like, I really, just to give you a little bit of a teaser, what do you guys think the evaluation of the final position is in this position where black resigned? Who wants to take a wild guess? Plus 500. It's around plus 7. Like it goes up to, I think it goes up to like plus 10, right? And in this position, white is completely winning. Why? Simple reason: difference of pieces, right? Piece activity. So piece activity really matters, right? Sometimes you can even give up material, right, to improve relative piece activity. And in this case, black's pieces are all really bad, really passive, and white's pieces are all geniuses, right? And white can pretty much do almost anything he wants, right? And that's exactly, no material up and still plus 7, plus 8, right? So it's really telling, right? So to recap, we talked about a few things, right? We talked about importance of piece activity. We talked about importance of fighting for initiative, right? If you don't want to make dull draws, you have to look for a way to fight for initiative. And one good indicator could be looking for opponents' restricted pieces, right? And then when opponent has a restricted piece on the queen side, we want to try to put pressure on the king side, try to get initiative. If he has restricted pieces on the king side, we try to play on the queen side. But of course, we have to make sure it's actually going to be initiative, right? Because in that game Shirov example, knight h4 wasn't really initiative, right? It wasn't so easy to get initiative. Plus, the bishop was sort of coming back in the game quickly, right? So there we needed to do something really fast. All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. You'll always be able to watch this again on YouTube to kind of reinforce the lesson. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson, and hopefully you'll be able to use these new tools to be able to pose some problems to opponents and create initiative. All right. Take care, everyone.